The Council of Small Towns will host the state's largest gathering of suburban and rural town leaders and legislators Wednesday in Cromwell for Connecticut's Town Hall Meeting 2012. Betsy Gara is the Council's Director of Public Policy. Betsy, thanks for being here. You've heard the last two segments. What do you think of their analysis of how the session is going so far and their priorities?
It's going to be a busy session, absolutely. Education reform is going to be one of the top priorities, but there are other issues. Certainly we at COST are looking for some relief from unfunded mandates, looking at ways to make sure that towns can do more with less resources. You know, speaking of education
educational cost sharing, I mean, the governor has said that no town is going to lose any of that. Does that offer any sort of, does it ease anyone's concerns about costs?
We certainly applaud the governor's initiative in putting more money into the education cost-sharing formula. ECS has been underfunded for decades. At this point, it's $800 million in terms of a shortfall of funding. We need to begin to correct that, so certainly $50 million is a good start. We are concerned, however. We understand that the state needs to target resources to the neediest districts. They certainly need to work to close that achievement gap. But the small towns are also struggling to meet the educational needs of their students. The standards are getting much more rigorous, and they're looking for ways to be able to provide that educational excellence without cutting critical programs. You might see across the state that towns are now grappling with their education budgets. Some towns have cut music programs. Others are talking about cutting foreign language programs or athletic programs. We're in a really tough spot there.
So is it intimidating? Are you hearing from members, is it intimidating when you hear about teacher or just education reform and you hear about, there's new nutritional guidelines, there might be new ideas about how to train teachers, but, in the end, a lot of times that means more cost.
It does mean more cost. I mean, right now there's a lot of data assessment going on in the schools, and it's taking a lot of time and a lot of resources away from really those core academic educational programs that we really need to make sure that our students are graduating with the skill levels that they need. Towns are finding that they're more accountable for making sure that kids get those standards, and unfortunately we're just finding that it's really difficult within the resources that we have.
We heard Senator Williams talk about some of the Democrats' plans for holding power companies accountable and ensuring, that towns have their power when they need it and residents have power. Do you think there's anything that they're not talking about that you need them to talk about in terms of supporting towns or when that happens?
Certainly there needs to be better communication whenever we have some kind of severe weather-related event like that. I think towns are very frustrated that they weren't getting the information that they needed, and that certainly they weren't able to get power restored in some of those critical areas such as nursing homes and populations that are in severe need. The other thing, though, is that the state needed to do a better job of coordinating their response efforts. In some of the small towns, you have one road going in and out of town, and that road is critical to making sure that people have access to medical care, to food, water, etc. And unfortunately, we had some issues where those roads were not cleared for several days, and that was something that we need to see corrected.
Let's talk about some positive things. What are the areas that your members are optimistic about?
We're very optimistic. The governor did put forward a proposal on mandate relief that included some top priorities. One of those is correcting a recent Connecticut Supreme Court decision that requires towns to redact the residential addresses of any person that falls within a certain protected class, like firefighters, correction officers, defense lawyers, judges. There's a whole list, but you have to redact them from every public record. And so how do you comply with the Freedom of Information law and have to go back and redact all those records? It just created a very unworkable, burdensome process. That was in the bill. There's also an initiative in there to ensure that we're not going to lose a potential $25 to $30 million in revenue by virtue of a court decision that said that we can't tax real estate which has partially completed construction on it.
Right. I know that CBIA recently came out with an economic perspective that said that a lot of business owners are very optimistic, more optimistic, I guess I should say, than in previous years, and that's good news for towns, right?
It is good news. In fact, at our board meeting this morning, we talked about the need to really get the economy back on track, and that it is important that we begin to focus on jobs as an organization. Many of us are seeing the kids graduate, they're not coming back to Connecticut, they're going out of state, and then we really need to expand our support for those jobs initiatives.
Right, we only have a few seconds, so tell us, so the event is Wednesday,
February 22nd. It is the state's largest gathering of suburban and rural mayors, first selectmen, town officials, lawmakers. It's an opportunity to hear from our state leaders and the governor about the priorities for this session. Members also vote on our key issues for this particular session. And it's just a great gathering and a way for everyone to communicate about the needs of the state.
And they get to tell the leaders what
They do, and they're not shy about telling the leaders what they think they should focus on this session. It's at the Crown Plaza in Cromwell. There's still room. If you're interested in attending, we'd love to have you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Don't forget, if you missed something here on The Real Story, you can now watch it online by going to ctnow.com. You can also catch us on YouTube. Thanks for watching this week's edition of The Real Story. We'll see you here again next week.